and we coming back. Mr. Martin, you can pursue if you remember the question.
I
You
believe
were
the
talking
question.
about the school where you went and start working on interfaith.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, so it was after I took the course on religions of the world. I really wanted to learn about as many different religions as I could and learn as much as I could about them. And I found the best way to do that is really to talk to the practitioners of the religion itself. That's the best way to understand what it's like to be part of that community. And I found that interfaith spaces were the best place for somebody who is seeking or exploring their spirituality because it's a very non-hostile uh, presentation of the different religions. People who are in the interfaith movement are very open about sharing what they believe. They'll voice their values openly and comfortably, but they don't pressure you um, in the same way where if you're seeking and you go to a church, for example, or a mosque, and you tell people there that you're interested, there's going to be a lot of, sort of pressure on somebody, even if it's all in good natured, but there can be sort of a pressure associated with that as well. So I started meeting students from many different religions at ASU. We actually started an interfaith student organization called Sun Devils Are Better Together. Sun Devils, by the way, is the Arizona State University mascot. We ran into a lot of confusion internationally with people who would say,
Okay.
why do you have devils in your name? Um,
Yeah,
but it was
devil is,
right, has some different meanings.
yeah. So, Mr. Vasu, often when you kind of choose a religion, and you have, you believe that this is the path, I should follow. Do when you have that mentality, is it not a little bit scary to get involved on interfaith dialogue or issue when you already know which path is the best path for you?
Thank you. Yes, when I was 18, I met Interfaith and I started to work on Interfaith. That's 10 years ago. I'm 28. So, in all these 10 years of my experience working on Interfaith, I always feel, as Johnny mentioned, that interfaith spaces are a safe space. I feel safe and I feel that is inclusive, that we integrate all diverse voices. So I always feel comfortable to be in interfaith spaces. And for me was the perfect place where I met Buddhism together with other religions because I don't feel the pressure to become Buddhist. I feel free to take my own decision. And that was the perfect place for me to meet all diverse religions and to take my decision and to practice my religious freedom as individual.
So, what are the main topic you discuss in an interfaith gathering? Um, because I know it's based on religion, but each person will come with his own religion and meet with people who have the same belief about their religion. So, what are the discussions and subject that are often discussed on those gatherings?
Well, I'll defer to the Bhikkhu Vasu Bandhu, who's an interfaith professional, to talk more about this. But
Mm.
I'll just say, from my experience doing it with students, whenever we brought a bunch of students from different religions together, we would usually try to start with something light and something that maybe everyone would have in common. So rather than immediately opening the box to talk about our different beliefs and the controversies associated with that, we would start by talking about favorite foods or what you did over the summer or how your classes are going and what you're studying. And people would make connections on those things first, even just over a 5 or 10 minute period. And then when you start talking about religion, you've sort of everybody's already sort of cooled off. So everybody's more willing to give each other the benefit of the doubt and to actively listen because you made a connection and you now are looking at somebody more of as a friend instead of an adversary.
I see. What about you, Mr. Vasu?
I also focus my work on peace, understanding that we can get agreements with people in religions who believe sometimes completely opposite, completely different with each other in theology, in practices, even in specific um, ways in which they live. So I working and I focus on peace and also to appreciate the diversity, to recognize that the diversity make us better and that in the diversity we find also the opportunity to approach in specific ways, in unique ways, to social justice, to peace, to make better our society. So that's the focus that I have in my work on peace and diversity.
Based in your answers, what I'm learning is, for instance, Mr. Martin, you emphasize it. Um, Despite it's based on interfaith, is about religion, you first are more interested on the human being. This is, I think, a great approach. You're trying first to learn about the person, not his religion. Of course, his religion matter because it's what brought you together. And after that, you engage on discussing about a religion, religious faith. And further, the view or the mission you have to um, build a peaceful environment, it's like a commitment. You come with whatever it is. I prioritize peace in our religion, and in our relations. I think this is a interesting ways of that we can apply in many different area. In the political debate, in the scientific debate. When we don't see each other as enemies, but we see each other as people who are pursuing the same goal for the benefit of humanity. But you have been working in the interfaith for many years. However, when you watch the news, there are really crazy things happening. There are wars, and some wars are triggered because of religion differences and belief. Do you come to some point where in your work you say, like, I'm not going nowhere and I should give up? Or this just give you more energy to keep working on your interfaith journey?
Thank you. Personally, I feel that give me more energy to continue working for peace through interfaith collaboration, multisectorial and also intergenerational. Because we can see, as you mentioned, in politics, there is deeply and debates who actually sometimes divide families, friends, and they see each other as an enemy. So my hope is that we can bring the beauty of interfaith collaboration into politics, into the public of United States and all societies, all the countries. I feel that interfaith gives a very unique and beautiful way to approach on diversity and how to live in harmony. So I deeply believe that interfaith is part of the response when we live in violence or conflict.
What about you, Mr. Martin?
It's interesting because I I would say that I am one of the people who, in some senses, has given up on the interfaith movement. I was very actively involved for a number of years. I sat on the board for, I think, three different interfaith organizations where I was, having weekly meetings to work on building these bridges of cooperation and respect between different communities. And I got burnt out. And I'll tell you why. It wasn't because of all the horrible things happening in the world and on the news. It was because I felt that the interfaith activists were not addressing any of those things. I started to feel that a lot of what was happening in interfaith spaces was people who are already like-minded and who are already peace-oriented coming together and enjoying each other's company. And there's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, if you're a peace-oriented person, spending time with other peace-oriented people, it feels great. But I didn't see enough action, enough action happening to make people's lives better. If we see in the news all the time that people are suffering, and the messages of the world's great religions are often to focus on the suffering of others and try to alleviate the suffering of others whenever and wherever possible. And I didn't feel that I was seeing that enough in interfaith spaces. So I turned, similar to what my husband just shared, I turned towards political spaces where I thought, even if it's less peace oriented and sometimes more hostile and adversarial when you're talking about American politics, there's at least action happening and movement happening that would make an impact on people's lives in a very direct way.
I see. So, through your, if you have a young man come to you and share his desire of willing to get involved on the interfaith work, what advice can you can you give him as people who went through that path?
I'll start maybe with this one because I think my last answer was a little bit negative, and I don't want to sound negative. If somebody wants to join the interfaith movement, I would wholeheartedly encourage them to do so, and I would endorse that decision with every fiber of my being. I think that the interfaith movement shaped who I am today in so many ways. It made me a more compassionate person, more sensitive to other cultures and other perspectives. So it's a great place to be, and it can make you wiser and help you become a better person. But I would encourage somebody who's joining now to keep in mind, who who they're wanting to serve, because you can get a lot personally out of the interfaith movement. But if you're somebody who wants to use the interfaith movement as a vehicle for change, just know that that requires a lot of work and a lot of willpower.
I see. What about you, Mr. Vasu?
I have learned since the beginning that everything that the interfaith movement is because many people have been working for many years. For all these people that have been working, I feel appreciation and deeply commitment to continue that legacy. So I deeply believe in intergenerational collaboration. As a young person, I deeply believe that we should respect and honor everything that the older generations have do for the interfaith collaboration. So my advice to young people is to appreciate and to honor older generations for everything that they already do for interfaith collaboration. And for us as a young people to continue that legacy, because everything that we do is because many people have been working to make that possible.
Another question that come to my mind, maybe I should start it with that question. What interfaith mean for you? How you define it? Because I feel like I have been involved in interfaith work as well. And in some cases, I believe action is required, not only rhetoric, but we have to live up to the rhetoric we are preaching. And in some cases, it's not the case. And we have to, I think it's wise to acknowledge, because if you don't acknowledge those issues, you will not be able to improve. And therefore, I bring it to the table. How do you define interfaith as a movement?
So for me, interfaith, in my experience, has the meaning of all diverse religions collaborating for peace, for sustainable peace. And for me, interfaith means diversity, means all the global community interconnected and recognizing the interdependence that we all have. Also, for me, interfaith means a safe space for everybody, even those who don't have a specific religion or identity in a specific faith, or even those who are atheists, secular. So for me, interfaith means including everybody, not just religious people, but also secular atheists and people who are looking to find their religion.
I see. That's a great point. What about you, Mr.
For me,
Martin?
I would adopt the old school Interfaith America model to describe what I think interfaith is. So before it was Interfaith America, the old name used to be IFYC, Interfaith Youth Corps. I received training from that organization, and everything interfaith is really encapsulated in three words, three different activities: voice. It's people of different religions or belief systems coming together to voice those values and beliefs. Just because you have a Muslim, a Christian, and a Jewish person sitting in a room together, it's not interfaith if they don't actually voice what makes them Christian, Jewish, or Muslim. So you have to have voice, you have to engage. So it's not enough to just say, I'm a Muslim, I believe this, then the next person, they're a Christian, they believe this. There has to be some sort of engagement between them, asking questions for appreciative inquiry so you can actually know somebody better, not asking a question just to try to make an argument or act on a suspicion. You have to engage. And the last thing is act. You have to do something together. With the IFYC model, a lot of times it's community service projects, whatever you can do to actually go out then after you've voiced your values and beliefs, after you've engaged with this person and formed a relationship, do something to make your community better. Like, you probably have totally different belief systems. You probably have totally different ways of practicing those belief systems, but I bet there's a common thread between the different religions that says something about helping strangers. And so it's very easy then to spend one day focusing on only that and go out into the community together and clean up a park, or feed those who are unhoused, or do something. And really, it has to be all three of those ingredients to me to make it interfaith.
I see. I think through your interfaith journey, you went to it trying to open yourself about your faith as a person, but in same time learning about other people's faith and trying to preach a common ideal that that is a reality to all the religion, that is peace. But more than that, in your interfaith journey, if I'm not mistaken, you find love. How did it come?
I'll go first on this one because it's fun to talk about. We found love just because we were in the right place at the right time. The first time I saw my husband was at an interfaith gathering. Was the first day of the conference, and we
Would
were
you
in the
mind be
south.
more specific where?
Yes, of course. It was the North American Interfaith Network Conference. The organization is called NAIN, N-A-I-N. And they have, in the past, I don't know about in the future or present day, but in the past, they used to have a conference once each year, and it would alternate between the three countries: United States, Canada, and Mexico. And it just so happened that this one particular year, it was in Canada, in Edmonton, Alberta. And Vasu Bandhu was the visiting scholarship recipient from Mexico, and this was my fourth NAIN conference in a row. So I had started attending every year and getting really involved. And I saw him across the yard. We were outside of a building at a university campus in Edmonton, and the indigenous elder who was at the conference was gathering people for a prayer circle. So everybody stood in a circle, and we actually, it's the only time I've ever done this, but there was a pipe with tobacco. It was part of the indigenous ceremony. Part of the prayer circle is that we would pass around this pipe. Every person was encouraged to share and, you know, take one inhalation of the tobacco smoke. And as you exhaled, the elder told us we should, with our intentions, manifest a prayer, you know, what we want. Um, and I could have prayed for anything. I could have prayed for world peace. I could have prayed for, you know, the conference to go well. But all I could focus on was this man standing on the other side of the circle. And I prayed as I exhaled the tobacco smoke that I would just have a chance to meet him and talk to him, get to know him, and if it was right, to form some kind of relationship. So I really say it was love at first sight. This is before he spoke anything. And I came to find later that same day that he spoke only very little English, and I only spoke a very little Spanish at the time. So we did have a chance to talk, and we got to know each other, and eventually fell in love during that conference and started a long distance relationship afterwards. But it was a lot of very patient communication between us. And I think the interfaith movement actually really prepared us to have a dialogue. You know, it was between two people who really didn't speak the same language. We did not have a lot of ways to communicate, except for we used technology. We started passing a Google Translate on the phone back and forth. But yeah, it's definitely something that interfaith made possible, and it's still at the core of our marriage.
Yeah.
Yes, I will share a story. Yesterday, I was talking to a friend, and she told me that she only speak English. And I challenge her on that. I say each person speak two languages at least, and one is the language of love. And I feel like despite you were not able to communicate, you didn't see it as a challenge, because underlying those your language differences, there was the language of love. Mr. Vasu, when did you go to that conference, and which month was it, and why you decided to go there?
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that about the language of love. That's very mindful. For
Yeah.
me, I find that like a beauty meaning in my life, and has been very beautiful also to learning English with the time. And thanks to my husband, because I was not speaking Spanish. So learning English has been a journey. It has been difficult, but it's beautiful how you describe the language of love, because I feel the language of love is what motivates people to do things, to believe, and to be alive.
Yes.
So for this conference, we were in August. So that was a very beautiful time. And I decided to be part of the conference because I was working in Mexico with interfaith organizations and also within the Buddhist community.
Which year was it?
That was in 2018.
So was it love in first sight, like Mr. Martin said?
Yes, I feel that. And because the language of love and the language of also understanding each other.
You know, it's interesting. I would just add, not only did the differences in language not keep us apart, I think we actually appreciated it more, like the extra effort that we had to take to communicate each and every little sentence. It made the, you know, the emerging relationship that much more precious. And because we're both so enamored by, you know, diversity and different kinds of cultures and different kinds of people, we were both very prepared, and not just prepared, but excited to actually talk to somebody who we saw as being very different from ourselves.
Yeah,
Yes.
I truly agree with you guys. Because I feel like when we love somebody or when we love something, we are willing to put the energy because of love. And we are willing to be patient. We are willing to be understanding. And we are willing always to listen. And it's very, I think those are the kind of, the path that are um, um, guided by love. If in many relationship there is a saying, oh, we have difficulties communicating and things, it's because there is love is lacking. Because if there is love, you are willing, you are to do the effort. And I think in your relationship, despite is the love in first sight, it did take you time. How long it take you to come to the point where you say, I want to spend the rest of my life with this person? How long?
So that has been a very deeply decision and taking some time to thinking. And I find that is very similar when I find and I decide to become Buddhist, because it's a decision that we take. And it's a decision that takes me and take us time to learning to take that decision. And also because, for example, Johnny is the first non-Mexican in my family, and I'm the first no-American in his family.
Yes.
So his us has two different world view and social context, deciding to become a family.
Okay, so how long it took you to come to that decision? Because you may met in many cases in our relation, we meet many people, but the journey didn't take us far. And you decided, despite your cultural differences, despite your religious differences, and despite everything, you want to be together. How long it take you to commit in your relationship?
It's interesting because there's sort of two answers. There's the answer that I think my husband just gave, which is that we honestly are deciding to stay married every day.
Okay.
It's an ongoing process, and
Mm,
I don't think it gets easier over time,
mhm,
but it also doesn't necessarily get harder over time. It shouldn't get harder, but it is actively a choice every day to, like, wake up with this person, stay committed to this person, and
mm.
show love to this person, sacrifice things from time to time for this person. um, that's always a choice that we're making every day. But I think the more direct answer, really, and kind of the better answer is, we decided very quickly. We, by the end of this, I think it was a 4 or 5 day conference when we met on the first day. By the fifth day, we were spending all of our time together, and had exchanged numbers, and we're talking about, oh, how can we see each other again after this conference is over. And what we did is we started having phone calls or video calls every single night to have a long distance relationship. And we found another interfaith conference that was happening 3 months after the main gathering where we first met. And
Yeah.
that was the Parliament of the World's Religions that
Mm,
was going to be happening in Toronto, Ontario. And so we decided to rendezvous again 3 months after we first met at another interfaith conference, and we decided to get married while we were there. So we became engaged at the Parliament of the World's Religions in 2018. And the way that happened also just sort of fell into our laps. There was a volunteer at the conference who saw us holding hands. She asked us if we were married, and we said, "Oh no, we're just boyfriends, for lack of a better term." And she said, "Oh, well, would you like to get married? Because I'm a minister and I can marry you right here at this conference." And the only reason we decided not to is because we didn't want to elope. We wanted our families to be present for our ceremony, but we let that person do an engagement ceremony for us. Her name is Karen Ostrowski, and she did a beautiful ceremony there at the Parliament. So we decided to live our lives together within 3 months after having met.
I see. Marriage, often in where I come from, I'm from Africa. Marriage, they say, is not only between two people. Marriage is between, of course, two people, but is between families as well. And in your case, how did your family perceive your relationship?
For asking, and also I would like to compliment because we do the ceremony with our religions in the parliament, the next parliament on 2021, the virtual parliament of the world's religions. So the parliament also has been a very special place for us, for our family. So answering your question on our families, so my family don't speak English. Everybody speaks Spanish. So sometimes the language is a barrier to communicate in the beginning, but now it's perfect. Now we can communicate perfect. And I feel because my family background is in the Catholic Church, so in the Catholic Church has institution, it's not common to see people from the same gender to become a family. So they are learning, my family is learning how to understand this. Also because my mother, so her church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, has institution, is also not open to having two men get married. So for me has been the experience to teach my family to understanding that, and they are learning, and we are finding the way to living in harmony on that.
So at least there is conversation, there are
Yes.
discussion, there is dialogue, and we hope at the end there will be understanding. What about you, Mr. Martin?
You know, my family really loves Vasu Bandhu, so I think they actually prefer him to me sometimes. So they had a plenty of time to come to terms with the fact that I was gay before they met my husband. Had plenty of time to come to terms with the fact that I'm also Muslim before meeting him. So I think you know, they would have embraced whoever I chose as a partner, but they really appreciate Vasu Bandhu for who he is, because he's so kind and patient, you know, has a very like noble heart and a very noble soul. So I think my family is like, you know, they feel lucky. They feel that I'm lucky certainly to have him in my life, but they are lucky because I married him and he gets to be part of our family. The other thing though, I just want to mention, you know, as a Muslim, marriage is a very important part of our deen, of our faith. A lot of sheikhs, a lot of Islamic scholars, imams will say that it's half the deen, half of practicing our religion is being a good spouse to your partner. So, and it's also in Islamic culture, or a lot of cultures that are predominantly Muslim, you find that it's also viewed much more as a contract than it is a state of emotion, right? Marriage is not always, oh, it's so about love and infatuation, but a lot of times it's more an agreement in writing that carries the force of law, under which you agree to plan a future together. You know, and that's really, it's a contract at the end of the day, so that both parties can feel safe knowing I have an agreement in place and this agreement is going to continue. I can reasonably and safely plan my life around expecting that this other person is going to be there and do their part.
I see. Often what I learn is very difficult if you are not courageous enough to defy society and to defy your community, to defy your society. And marriage, when you come to marriage, people, when they kind of look around their society, often they say, well, you need to do certain, you need, you seeking to marry somebody, there is an ideal person that you should look for, and often that ideal person is not really based on love. It's based on race, is based on gender, is based on religion, and these are the tool you are fed to choose for a partner. And often those, because love is missing, and the result became end up being a disaster. I just want to know where that courage come from when your decision is basically out of religious concept, gender concept, race concept, cultural concept, language concept, and is solely based in love. Where did you get that courage to be able to do what you are living today?
I feel because we deeply appreciate the diversity, and also because, for example, we are from different nationalities. So Mexico and United States have a specific relationship, and sometimes there is people who create conflict between that kind of diversities that we are part of. But for us, it's because we appreciate the diversity, and because love interconnects with that diversity that we are. So I think that's the power of love. And during the parliament, actually, we have learning about the power of love and inclusion. So for me, it means the power of love.
Okay. Diversity, accepting differences, and being guided with the power of love. What about you, Mr. Martin?
I have two answers to this, I think. The first answer is I think I get a lot of the courage to be myself from my country, actually, because of being an American. I've grown up around people from many different cultures, many different backgrounds, many different races, many different kinds of accents all my life. I've always been accustomed to having that diversity. Just, it's like a fish in water. um so much so that, like, I notice anytime I'm in a room and there's some aspect or element of the diversity missing. So if I go into a room and it's all white people, I notice that right away, and it makes me feel uncomfortable. And so I think that that's something, because I'm used to diversity being built in. It Once I started to look inward and develop aspects of my own identity that were, not part of the majority, I realized it's okay to be different. It's okay to be yourself and to just accept that, in some ways I'm like a lot of people, and in some ways I'm fairly unique. And then the other answer, though, and I think the better answer for anybody who may be listening to this and is wondering if they can have that same courage, I didn't see it as courage at any point when it came to being myself. In fact, if anything, I started to feel that it would take more courage to stay hidden, to continue living a lie, because of how unhappy I was, not being able to be authentic. So really, it's not courage. So I mean, I think courage is something that you do, like if you're gonna, you know, jump onto some train tracks and pull somebody off before the train comes. That's like courage, because it's selflessness, right? It's self-sacrifice. When I finally decided to come out, it was for me and for myself, to defend myself from a future that I didn't want to live. So, maybe others see it as courage, and I know this happens a lot when it comes to sexual orientation. When somebody finally comes out, they actually give courage to other people. Somebody, suddenly, begins to identify who they really are, and you feel that you're proud of them, or that you're inspired by them for doing that. But for the person who's actually doing it, at least in my experience, I was just fed up with living the lie, and I wanted people to know my truth, and I didn't want to have to keep considering, oh, have I told this person or not told this person? Does this person know or do they not know? What part of myself am I going to show today and what part am I going to keep hidden? That is too much work, and that causes a lot of internal stress. And for me, it just wasn't worth it anymore.
So basically, if I have understanding, you choose the path of freedom.
Yes.
The freedom to be yourself and not to worry about other people, what other people think about you. But as a couple who are in love, in our life, you know, we all are saved by certain freedom, certain wisdoms. Life is up and downs. And what are the challenges you face as a couple who come from different cultures and share different religious belief? And how do you deal if there is few challenges along the road? How do you deal with it?
I think I'm the source of a lot of challenges in our marriage just because of my context, my culture, and even myself as an individual. I am sort of an explosive person. So, for better or for worse, I react very strongly to a lot of things. And my husband, even beyond the inherent peacefulness of being a Buddhist monk, he is a very calm and tranquil sort of person. So, it's like those two things don't necessarily mix, but it's only one side that's having to experience the suffering of how volatile I can be. So, I think it's for me, the challenges are daily and recurring. And the way of working on those challenges, it's all self work. It's all internal for me. It's about self reflection. And because I can't control or change any part of him, nor do I necessarily feel like I would want to or would have the need to do that. But there's a lot of things about me that I'm constantly trying to improve. So, that's the most important work in my mind in a marriage is the work that you do on yourself.
I see. What about you, Mr. Vasu?
Thank you. I feel very connected with that, and I think that's something that we have in common very deeply. Working with ourselves, with the deeply understanding and developing mindful of the understanding of why and how we want to be. Personally, I feel that um, practicing mindfulness helps me to having a more peaceful life and to find solution for the problems that can be in life. Also to take a moment to breathe. I think that's something that helps me. And I think that's something that is always good to have in life, to take just a moment to breathe.
I see. Mr. Vasu, Mr. Martin, I don't know why our path crossed, but they did. And I'm very grateful, basically, that we had the chance at one moment in our life to meet. And thank you. Really, I really appreciate for you taking the time to share part of your journey, because I believe the journey will keep going, is only part of it for now. And thank you for joining me on the human right tree and sharing your story. And I truly believe maybe in 100 years from now, other people will listen to our conversation and get inspired to live the life of peace, love, and being themselves. And I just want to say I'm grateful for your time. And I just want to say also thank you for everything. Because for me, it's a learning experience. Is the reason I create this platform is to listen to other people and learn from them. But I will not end up the conversation on my own word. I will always let my guests, have the last word. What do you want to share to the world around us.
I would like to deeply thank you for your time, also for having the opportunity to connect and to sharing, for your deeply listening and beautiful questions. And I want to invite everybody that is listening this conversation to find themselves, to find peace, and that they know that it's possible to find peace, to find harmony with even people who disagree in our societies, or be ourselves. But to find peace and harmony with everybody is possible.
Thank you. What about you, Mr.
I
Mike?
also just want to thank you, Alpha, for inviting us to do this and for hosting us here in this space. It was really a wonderful chance to spend more time with you and to reflect on ourselves. And I just want to share with any of your listeners, you can feel free to look me up on social media, add me on Facebook or Instagram, whatever you use. Also, if you would like to get involved with this interfaith movement, the Parliament of the World's Religions is something that happens every 2 to 4 years. They have another conference. I'm not sure when or where the next one will happen, but hopefully, folks can check that out if it's something they're interested in. There's also URI, the United Religions Initiative, is a global grassroots interfaith network. So see if there's any URI cooperation circles in your area. It's always an easy way to get involved.
Thank you again. Thank you for making the world a better place. For me, this conversation is only the beginning, and I will always try to reach out and learn more from you guys. Again, thank you very much for joining me under the Human Rights Tree. Peace and love.
Thank you.